Queensbury. My dad's a retired forest ranger. My mom was a secretary at Queensbury High School. You know, I graduated from Queensbury, went to Clarkson, and then while I was there, I got picked up for the Navy's nuclear power scholarship program. They needed technical majors to run the nuclear reactors on the ships. So I signed up. It was a 5-year commitment. They helped pay for my last couple years of school. And I owed them 5, but I ended up serving a total of 8. My ship was out of Bremerton, Washington, near Seattle. I've been in the Persian Gulf. I've been through the Panama Canal. Again, qualified a long time ago, qualified to operate nuclear reactors. So a long ways from that to politics. But when I got out of the Navy in 1998, moved back home, took a job in the private sector as an engineer in manufacturing in Glens Falls, got involved in the local government, zoning board of appeals. I mean, realtors are very familiar with the ZBAs and what they mean and do in our communities. And then I ran for town board, 4 years as a councilman, 9 years as Queensbury's town supervisor. It's about 29,000 person town. And the last 2 years of which I was the chairman of the Warren County Board of Supervisors. So a lot of local government experience before I was in the assembly. Teresa Sayward retired and I ran for her open seat. And I'm in my 8th year in the assembly now, and now Betty's retiring. So, you know, I bring a lot of local and state experience. All the issues that we're dealing with in the assembly, it's the same legislation in the Senate. You know, the players are different in the Senate. It's a different body. But the issues, the legislation, the departments that we work with, the people that we work with back home, Betty and I have a lot of the same meetings together with constituents. When there's a problem, there's an issue that needs to be discussed, and they want to talk to both of us, Betty and I are the first people to say, hey, let's have one meeting and have both of us there. So yeah, I've been working very closely with Betty for the last 8 years. Thrilled to have her endorsement and her support. I know that means a lot to a lot of people, carries a lot of weight in the district, and I'm appreciative for it. But, you know, I mean, I'm pro small business. I was just recently endorsed by NFIB, and I have been in the past for all my previous assembly runs, NFIB on Shackle Upstate, Circle of Friends for the Farm Bureau. So I'm a pro-business person, but my background again is my father's a forest ranger and I'm a 46er. You know, I love the Adirondacks. I like to think I have some level of expertise in the Adirondacks because of my recreational choices and growing up in a DEC household. But, you know, my strong suit is making sure that we're striking that balance in the Adirondacks between a functioning economy and protecting the place that everyone loves. So, you know, I want to thank you guys again. Take any questions that you guys may have for me. Thank you.
Jody, you have a question?
She's muted.
Of course I have questions. Don't I always? They're going to say, Jody, stop asking questions. So one of the things when we were in Albany last year, and we heard, I think, from Mike Kelly a lot about, was the balance being very swayed now in New York State when it comes to the numbers on the left and the numbers on the right, and the governor being Democratic. And so I think they mentioned a lot of like the rental reform laws came from some kind of basically like, if you think you could put it on my desk, I'll sign it. And so I kind of wonder, like, if you're coming in a seat for that Betty Little held, and you know that the numbers aren't like 49-51, it's like way off. How do you, what is your plan to try to not get frustrated or to try to get things done knowing you're kind of going up against a pretty big wall?
Well, I mean, the first key to not being frustrated is to remind myself and this call, remind you guys that I've been outnumbered 2-1 in the assembly for the last 8 years. I mean, literally 108 to 42. So I'm used to being on the short side, but you know what? There's also freedom with that. And I'll point out that of all my assembly colleagues, I've had more bills passed and signed into law as an Assembly Republican than any other Assembly Republican in over the 8-year window. So no one's passed more legislation as an Assembly Republican since I've been there than I have. And 4 constitutional amendments that, you know, I mean, there's extra hoops to jump through. They're going to put somebody else's name at the top, but there were 3 Adirondack related constitutional amendments, the land bank, Township 40 and NICO Mineral were the 3. And then the 4th constitutional amendment that I was heavily involved in was the pension forfeiture for corrupt officials. I mean, that was my issue, my bill, and we pushed that. So I was, you know, right at the table for all 4 of those constitutional amendments. Those are big achievements. So, you know, as a member of the minority, if you position yourself well, you're articulate, you're respectful. When you disagree, you do so professionally. then you build up a reputation for being somebody that can, you know, be dealt with and work together with. And I think I've earned that in Albany in the assembly. And then again, the nice thing is that, you know what, those kinds of reputations start to spill over to the other house and certainly the governor's office. So, you know, I mean, is it frustrating that, you know, that we're going to get a lot of New York City slanted legislation or priorities? Yes, of course it is. You can pick one. It may not even have anything to do with realtors, but there's a lot of them where you're like, man, you know, that's just not a North Country priority, or that's not the North Country solution to the problem. But you know what, you learn to pick your battles, and you know, you just push the things that you can push, and a lot of it is just building trust and respect with other members one-on-one. I mean, there's a time for partisan politics, and Albany can be a very partisan place. But the other thing is that I don't have to worry about keeping a majority leader happy in order to get, you know, something else down the line. You know, I can be the independent voice, because I don't have to worry about keeping my majority conference and being in good graces there. If there's something that's wrong, like overtaxation, you know, that affects all of us, or bad rent bill, or that gets passed that I voted against, I'm free to speak out against it and vote against it. And sometimes, so a lot of times it's the really bad bills that we help stop that maybe you don't ever read about, you know. But so there's always a role for a loyal opposition to play, and in New York State, you know, being dominated by New York City politics, you know, that's an important role for, I think, upstate Republicans to play.
Is it fair to say, from your experience and what you've seen, that it's more black and white, and there just is no give, or are more people in the gray area and there's a lot more actual compromise happening than maybe we see, as far as like extreme on both sides?
I think it's migrated a little bit. I think some of it was the demeanor or the attitude of the speaker. I think on the one hand, Sheldon Silver ruled with an iron fist, and he created a very partisan atmosphere. Whereas I think Carl Hastie in the assembly tends to be a little more pragmatic, but he's got some political realities too. I mean, he had a lot of very senior members of his conference get defeated in primaries this year by some very, you know, I mean, people that you and I might consider very, very liberal. They were primaried and beaten by somebody that's even farther to the left. So so the Speaker of the Assembly has his own conference internal politics to worry about. So I think, you know, today, I think just in general, I think that we're more, the divide is bigger nationally, you know, not just in Albany, but I just think, you know, turn on the television and watch what's going on. I think that maybe there's a silent majority in the middle that just say, hey, you know what, just, you know, cut out the nonsense and get to, you know, a reasonable outcome for this problem and move on to the next problem. But I think the loud voices on both ends of the bell curve are dominating the discussion now. So I think that the divide has gotten worse, but in spite of the speakership, I think that Speaker Hastie wasn't as partisan as Speaker Silver. But I think that the times are dominating now, and I think that it's just gotten, you know, where, I mean, everyone's civil to each other. They're, for the most part, they're very polite. You know, I mean, there's, you know, like anything else, you get 150 people in a room or 63 people in a room, you're going to figure out, hey, who's reasonable? Who can I talk to here? Who, you know, who's somebody that, you know, you can go back and forth on and have a discussion with. And those things happen quietly. They do, you know, so don't, you know, it's not all doom and gloom, I guess is what I should say.
Can I ask one more, Mike, and then Andrew can have at it, or do you want to share?
Andrew's got something for you.
Go ahead, Andrew. I'll take a back seat once again to you.
Part of the 2019 Tenant Protection Act. Can you hear me, Dan?
I can hear you.
All right. Mike backs up. I can get closer. We got to try to maintain our.
Are you guys 6 feet apart, and are you not wearing masks for a reason?
We are apart. Mike's just slid away over the wall so I can slide up.
Realtor Code of Ethics violation.
But thank you for asking. Part of the Tenant Protection Act of 2019, there's a lot of different things that came out of that. One thing that I thought was, well, I don't need to say what I think. I think we're here to hear what you have to think. Was that local governments or municipalities, if, you know, they can perform a market study to see, you know, if there's a 95% occupancy rate or greater, that the local, you know, I think it could be at the county level or even at the municipal level, they can determine if rent control can be enforced or brought in. And my thought, I was wondering if, in like the North Country market, if that's something where you think that, if we did have a 95% or greater occupancy rate, if it's something where you think that local municipalities should try to find avenues to provide local business people an opportunity to provide more housing, right? So there's supply or demand. So do we either provide more supply, maybe create ways for people to provide more housing, or do you try to fix, the prices or set caps on the rents to provide cheaper housing, I guess it would be, less expensive housing? Thank you.
All right. I mean, well, if I understand the question correctly, I mean, I think, look, I'm a free market guy. I'm a fan of capitalism. I reject socialism, and the fixing prices is a slippery slope. You're tinkering with the natural balance that comes from supply and demand and the simple market economies. So I would rather see more, a response to the market that, hey, we have a greater demand for housing, let's build more housing, than to have somebody artificially come in and say, well, we're going to, fix, limit the rent, because I'm a believer in property owners' rights. I mean, somebody owns that property and they're renting it out, and it's a market relationship. There's times for subsidies and the government to step in. I mean, I understand that there's needs for programs for affordable housing, but at the end of the day, somebody owns the building, somebody owns the asset. They're legally liable for what happens in there. They're responsible for the maintenance and upkeep if something bad happens because they didn't keep up with it. So they're constantly in a position where they have to make reinvestments in that property. And that was one of the bigger things with the rent bill that we passed that I voted against, that concerned a lot of people, is that you're doing nothing for the landowner. You're putting all the responsibility in the world on the landowner, but you're not allowing them any freedom or flexibility to recoup their investment, or giving them any incentives to make further investments on maintaining their building. And so I'll be the first person to say I'm not an expert in all the rent control. I mean, that's a foreign concept around here. I'm not in the real estate business. I don't know. I mean, this is not a North Country issue. This is a New York City issue. And it's a New York City issue that, again, now it has been brought statewide. And so there's a lot of uncertainties there. And again, it discourages investment, outside of New York City in rental income, rental property, I should say.
Thank you.
Jody, do you have one more? Or do you want me to click in with one?
You can go ahead.
All right. Dan, I mean, you've been certainly, you've been accessible to the North Country realtors since I've been here for 7 years. And why does Jody stay up there? No, it don't matter.
You trying to get rid of me?
Yeah, you're just sitting there, girl. It don't matter. Anyway. Given the current conditions with COVID-19, the pandemic, the state of the state finances, which we all are concerned about, here in the North Country, we're seeing urban individuals from New York mostly, but they're also from other places. But unlike typical second home buyers who are out of the state, these are in-state people who are moving up with their families and now attending schools. And with the condition of the finances within the state going forward, there is some concern up here that even that small influence of 10 to 20 students in a school could make a huge difference when we come down to doing budgets and local taxes. I know you can't answer that and you don't have a crystal ball, but you got to have better information than we do, and maybe a little insight into maybe what might be coming down the road.
Well, I don't need to tell you all, but every realtor that I've talked to from Glens Falls to the Canadian border in the last couple of months has been saying that, the real estate market is just, it's like post 9/11 again. that everyone is buying. A lot of people are buying without seeing even. They want to, you know, and as we improve and increase broadband access, that's going to be even easier for somebody that's in an urban area to say, I don't need this anymore, and the headaches that come with living in a city. I mean, there's a lot of pluses too, but you know, people that are like, hey, if I could get out of the city and keep my job, I would do that. So it's getting easier for them to do that, and you can buy a lot more house up here than you can, you know, in Westchester or, you know, certainly one of the boroughs. So I can understand, you know, that there's going to be a flow now of people coming up here. Betty has said this many times, and I agree with her, that the decline in our population numbers hurts us. It's a concern for our area economy. So on the plus side, if this is the reason that people are looking to relocate up here, is because of COVID-19, if that's the impetus to have people move into the Adirondacks, move into the North Country, that's a good thing. A lot of the schools, their numbers are right there. You know, the economies of scale aren't there. So if there's more children coming into the Adirondacks or into the North Country, that's a good thing for stabilizing the schools. But, you know, I mean, I'm not sure if I answered the question there, Mike, but, you know, it's just, I think it's an overall good thing if there's people moving into the area. I think it's good for the housing market. I think it's good for our, you know, for many things. You know, I think it stabilizes. I just think the draining of our population has been a negative impact on the North Country. So if there's a positive that's going to come out of COVID, is that it's going to somehow bolster our numbers. Now, with that said, from what I've gathered in the census numbers so far, they're saying that, at least reporting wise, the Adirondacks is not keeping up with the rest of the state or the rest of the country. So I don't know if it's that they're not collecting the numbers well, or if the numbers just aren't here anymore. You know, so that, I think that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, we know that the brain drain has been constant over the past number of years.
Yep.
And I think the only difference between now and back when 9/11 occurred is what I believe we're seeing is people are not relocating, they're not pulling up roots and moving. They're just buying additional properties and temporarily moving out of the urban areas, which scares me, because if it's temporary, there may be a migration back, which then will just blow the whole thing out of the water.
Yeah.
Jody, you just demuted, so you got one last question, then we got to wrap this up.
Okay.
So basically, I would ask from the perspective of realtors, what would you say going into office, if you get elected in, and what are your biggest ticket items? And now realtors are usually property owners and have kids in the schools and taxes, so it doesn't have to be like a real estate specific, but like, do you have some big items that you're really willing to go to battle for, that you're pushing hard?
Well, certainly, you know, COVID and the reaction to COVID and restarting the economy is going to be number one. Hopefully, that'll be less partisan than a lot of the other stuff that we've seen in history in Albany. And we're all waiting right now to go back into session, and we can't do that until the federal government kind of figures out what it's going to do for a package. So we need to react to that. But we've got a $14 billion gap. I mean, New York's problems predate COVID. And they all in their essence have one thing in common. It's overspending, overtaxation. We are the highest tax state in the nation. New York's budget is $170 billion plus or minus a year. Florida, who has more people than New York, their budget is $90 billion a year. Now, I'm not saying that it's as simple as we should be able to cut our budget to match Florida's at 90, but you know, if we started before COVID with a $6 billion gap, and now it's $14.5 billion and growing because of COVID. I mean, you know, it's out of our, you know, that was out of our control, but it was already a problem. I think that has to be the number one concern, and it was before COVID. Infrastructure, not exciting stuff, but again, the stuff that economies are built on, the stuff that good education is built on, the stuff that public safety is built on, good roads, good bridges, water, wastewater. I just was participated in a task force on water and wastewater quality around the state. We've got tens of billions of dollars of infrastructure needs just in water and wastewater. Again, that's public health, and that's the quality of life, and that's industry and the economy. Broadband and internet service. You know, I mean, this is something, again, if you had it in the North Country, and if you could bring home a Manhattan paycheck, but bring it home to Essex County or Franklin County or Clinton County. You could live like a king there, and think of the economic impact that would have on all the economies of the North Country. So we need to continue to do that. I've been supportive of what the governor's promised on broadband. We're not there yet. I think they're going to ultimately, unfortunately, need more money. This is not a good time to be needing more money for anything, but in order to finish his promise of getting broadband everywhere, we're going to have to stay on it, and we're going to need more funding. But those are the things. Again, the infrastructure stuff isn't the most exciting thing in the world to talk about, but it's one of the basic functions of government, is making sure that we've got good infrastructure, good public safety. Again, not a realtor thing, but a big picture thing. What do I think we're going to be fighting about, whether we want to or not next year? Funding level of public safety, funding level of the police. This is a real phenomenon. There's a real angst out there. For the life of me, I don't understand the philosophy, but this push to defund the police, that is going to be something that you asked what is worth fighting for. That's worth fighting for. Again, it's not a dollars and cents thing. I'm not sure it's exactly in the vein of what your question was, but what do I anticipate the fights over? How do we close a $14 billion a year or $14 billion gap in the budget for starters? And then, the funding level of the police, the function of police. So.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
As I said, we are recording this, and we will be sending it out to our membership. So they will all get to hear, what you had to offer today. And we wish you much success in the future, and hopefully November will be good.
I hope so. And again, I thank you for your time today, and to the larger group, the RPAC, thank you for their support. And it's been a privilege working with everybody in the assembly these last 8 years. And good Lord willing, and with the voters' approval, I look forward to just moving over to the different room. But again, the issues are the same. The legislation's the same. So I think I hit the ground running in that regard. But I thank you for your wishes, and we're going to keep working hard through November and beyond.
All right.
Thanks,
Dan.
and good luck.
Thank you. Thanks.